In this lecture, we'll talk about using data validation tools. Excel's data validation feature is different than a lot of other data management features that is mostly about data before it goes into the worksheet, not after. And we're looking at a sheet called The Best Hospital 12 Data Management Components. Let's imagine we're about to create a list here. We've got an ID number, a compensation, a status, and a department. Now, let's take, for example, the ID number must be 6 characters. They must all be numbers. They could all be letters. They could be a combination of either. So, let's say it's a combination of letters and numbers in our example here. And let's select column A. And before using the data validation feature, we want to highlight the cells where you want the row to be in place. In this example, we'll just select the entire row A. And then we'll go to the Data tab, found on the ribbon. And then we'll go to Data Validation. So on there, we will select Data Validation from the drop-down. We'll click on our Settings tab, should already be selected. We'll go Text Length, and then we'll say that the data is equal to a length, let's say 7 characters. I said 6 originally, but I'll go ahead and say 7. And then I'll go for an input message, which would be my next thing, and I'll put something in here like, I'll say must be 7 characters in length. So I'll do that. Must be 7 characters in length. And then the error alert, I'm not going to put an error alert. I'm just going to give them an input message and then click OK. So if you notice, each time I click, it says it must be 7 characters in length. And I can go A, B, C, D. And I get this value doesn't match the data validation restriction defined for the cell. So I'll do a retry, and I can go A, B, C, D, and then 1, 2, 3, and hit enter. I can go 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 8, 0, 1. And of course, I'm going to get the error again because I have 8 characters instead of 7. So I'll do the retry. And I can just go ahead and backspace over the 1 and hit enter. So the next thing I want to talk about is the compensation. Let's say, for example, that when our data entry operator begins to enter the compensation, is that we don't want any salaries entered in here above $125,000. So again, we'll go ahead and shade column B. We'll go back to our data validation. I'll click on that. And I'll click on settings. And I'm going to say allow any value. No, I'm going to say whole number. And the data is going to be less than, then my max is $125, $125,000. And I'm going to click on my input message. I don't want to give them an input message. I'm just simply going to tell them or give it to them as a specification to let them know not to enter any compensations in this sheet greater than $125,000. But I do want to give them an error alert if they do. So I'm going to say here, caution. Give them 3 exclamation points just to really get their attention. And I'm going to say must be less than $125,000. And I'm going to say okay to that. So if you see we click in here, I can go 124,999. I'm good. 125. So as you see, I get the error message caution. Must be less than $125,000. So I'm going to go ahead and retry. So I'm just going to go ahead and go 124 and hit enter. I'll go 123,9. And that one is wrong too. I can cancel and get out, and I'll go 123,900. Enter, and so on. So the next data validation rule I want to talk about is entering the status. And for the status, we're going to take the values from column G, and we're also going to use column H when we get to the department. But for column G, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on column C, shade that, that's my status. And what I want to do here, we only want the values that are located in G. So we want to give them a pick list. So basically I'm going to click there. I'm going to go data validation. And from my settings, I'm going to select any value, whole number, date, time, caution. Oh, I'm looking for pick list and I don't see that. So the closest thing to that is a list. So data is grayed out for us. So our source, it asks us for the source. I'm going to click in here. I'm going to go over to column G and shade and release. I'm not going to put an input message since the data is present or an error message. So I'm going to click OK on this. And so you notice if you go to status, anything in the status column, you hit the drop down, you get the options from column G where you can select whether they're part-time, hourly, or contract. So let's say that we have a new status that we want to add, and maybe that's intern. Type it in here. So I have it typed in, but if you notice I click over here, it's not included. So I want to get that included, so I'm going to click over here in column G in the cell where intern is located. I'm going to hit my shift once my cursor turns into a handle across hairs, and I'm going to drag this right on up. And if you notice now when I click over here that intern is included. So that's how you add an additional item to your pick list. The next thing I want to talk about is our department. And if you notice, we have a list of our departments over here in column H. And basically what I want to do is I'm going to click on department. I kind of have these in alphabetical order. So I'm going to click on department. I'm going to go to my data validation. And my settings, I want to select from a list. Data is grayed out from us. And the source, I'm going to click here and I'm going to shade the values in column H. Let's go down and release. I'm not going to have an input message or an error alert. I'm just simply going to say OK. And so basically I'll go back up in my department for my data entry operator. Maybe it's administrative training. It may be something like, and if you notice, once we get more than 8 characters, we get a little scroll bar here. It may be nursing administration, or maybe it's just plain nursing. And if you notice, those things are kind of far down the list. So what I'd like to do is bring nursing administration up near the top of the list because we have many that are in nursing administration, and we want the data entry operator to be able to select it quicker. So what I'll do is I'll click in the cell and wait for my handle or my crosshairs. I'll hit Shift, and let's drag nursing administration right on up closer to the top of the list. So now when we select, and we see that nursing administration is there for us. So the next thing I want to talk about is that for some environments, you have this out here, and you may not want to give it to the data entry operator to see those. So basically what we want to do is we want to hide these values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade these values in columns G and in column H. And I'm going to execute a Control X on my keyboard. Notice that there is a dotted box around these values. And what I want to do is I want to insert a new sheet. So I'm going to click here. I get sheet 1. I'm going to click in cell A1, right click on my mouse and hit a paste. And I have the values here. Then when I go back to my data validation, the values are still there for me for the data entry operator to continue entering those things if they'd like. So, and if I didn't want he or she to see that sheet, I can simply right click and then click hide, and then that sheet is hidden, but my values are still there for a person to go ahead and continue their data entry operation. So you've seen some variations on how we can use data validation, a powerful tool for controlling data before it goes into a worksheet. Data validation found on the Data tab.